They didn't even bother giving me a name, just a number. Subject 626, H, etched in scorched alien script across a steel collar latched around my neck. The collar hummed with energy whenever I stepped out of bounds, a reminder that I wasn't just a prisoner. I was property. The station, Xerxes Prime, wasn't designed with human comfort in mind. Cold metallic floors, air recycled through biofungal filters, and gravity just a bit too light to feel real. The Varukins called it a behavioral rehabilitation environment, but we both knew what it was. A test site, a cage, a place where they poked and prodded the galaxy's most dangerous species. And according to them, that included humans. They captured me on Midas, for during the last skirmish of the border conflict, I was a reconnaissance officer. Fast, quiet, effective, but they didn't care about that. What they cared about was that I was the first human taken alive after the ceasefire. To them, I was a war trophy, a curiosity, a myth made flesh and restrained. My cell was more observation lab than prison. Transparent alloy walls, ceiling-mounted surveillance drones, biometric scanners in every corner. I never had privacy, not even when I slept. I'd become a living exhibit in the galaxy's cruelest zoo. But they made one mistake. They assumed I'd break like them. The Varukins had been conquering species for centuries. They conditioned them, taught them fear, taught them obedience. Every alien I saw on that station had that same dull look behind the eyes. Hollow, submissive, broken. They expected the same from me. What they didn't understand was that humans don't break. We burn. We boil. We rise. And every day I studied them, their guard routines, their language, Veritech, a guttural, clicking mess of consonants, the station's rhythms, the shifts in lighting, the timing of patrols. I cataloged it all. Smiles when they thought I was docile, anger when I refused to eat, pain when they shocked me for resisting testing thresholds. I let them believe I was learning my place. I was just not the place they intended. Weeks passed, then months. My beard grew wild. Muscles shrank from confinement, but my will, it sharpened, hardened. I wasn't just planning escape. I was planning something more. Rupture. The other prisoners, they weren't human, but they watched me, quietly. Their eyes followed every move I made. Curious, desperate. They remembered who they used to be before the chains. And I reminded them. The day it began, I faked a seizure, dropped to the floor, twitched hard enough to draw panic from the younger technicians. The older ones didn't care. Primitive species spasms. One muttered. That was my opening. While they hesitated, I struck. Collarbones are good for more than just breaking. They're leverage. I used mine to jam into the sensor lock panel near the chamber door. It shattered, sending sparks in an audible frequency that knocked out the local drone network. My collar's override chip exposed. I ripped it off. The pain was astronomical. Nerve endings fried. Blood filled my mouth. But I was free. Alarm screamed as the door hissed open. I didn't run. I marched. My bare feet hit the cold metal like war drums. I moved through the station, stealing a shock baton off a stunned Varukin. He looked surprised, right before I drove the end through his exoskeletal ribs. I wasn't aiming to escape. Not yet. I was aiming to wake the others. The slave quarters. The holding pens. I found them. Used the security keys I ripped from the technician's console to unlock them one by one. Dozens of alien species. Some I couldn't name. Stumbled out. Terrified. Confused. I didn't give them speeches. Just looks. Just gestures. I gave them weapons when I could. Tools when I couldn't. Fire when I had to. Some turned away. Most followed. Because sometimes all it takes to shatter a cage is to see someone else break the bars first. We weren't a rebellion. Not yet. We were an idea. And the Varukins didn't know it yet. But this station wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. You never forget the sound of freedom when it's angry. It wasn't a cheer. It wasn't a song. It was guttural, primal, a storm of hundreds of beings roaring as one. Metal doors bent, bones snapped, Alarms wailed across Xerxes Prime like the station itself was screaming for mercy. And I wasn't giving it any. I led them through the eastern corridor. That's where the first real resistance hit us. Varukan enforcers in full plasma mesh, firing arc bolts that could melt a hole through Starship hull. But they didn't expect the Mac-Carry to charge first. 7 feet of bone-plated fury. The Mac-Carry once ruled half a quadrant before the Varukans civilized them. I watched one tear an enforcer in half, scream something in his native tongue, and laugh. That was when I knew we weren't just escaping. We were reminding the galaxy what it meant to be unbroken. I'd spent months listening to stories from those around me, not with words. Most didn't speak human, but with looks, scars, the way they flinch at certain footsteps. The Varukans hadn't erased their memories. They'd just buried them. Now, the fire was rising. We took engineering next. It was lightly guarded. They never expected prisoners to reach that deep into station. I hot-wired the atmospheric regulators, flipped the environmental seal codes, and cut oxygen to command deck. Tactical asphyxiation. A very human solution. A young alien clung to my arm as I worked. Her skin was translucent, like polished glass. I'd seen her before in the pens. Never spoke, just stared at the floor. But now, she gripped my hand like it was the only truth she had left. "Name?" I asked. She blinked. Then, in a voice like broken wind chimes, she whispered, "Ilsa." Not a Varukan name. Not even close. She was remembering who she was. And I remembered something, too. Hope is a virus. Infect one and it spreads. We made our way to the lift shaft. The mag elevators were offline, locked by the station's override protocol. But the shaft itself? That was just vertical space. And I had arms, legs, and rage. I climbed. Ilsa followed. Then the others. Hand over hand. Claw over pipe. We rose like a tide the Varukans couldn't dam. Halfway up, one of the plasma turrets activated. Automated defense systems rebooting. I dropped, swung sideways, shoved Ilsa to a ledge just as a bolt seared past me. It scorched the wall behind us, vaporizing a section of ladder. I caught myself by a cable, burning my palms raw. But pain didn't matter. Not anymore. I reached the turret console embedded in the wall, yanked its access panel, spliced 2 wires with my teeth. Boom. The turret exploded in a flash of shrapnel and smoke. I looked up. Dozens of faces peered down at me, wide-eyed, bloodied, free. "Keep climbing," I said, and they did. We emerged in the command deck. The Varukans were gasping, too proud to wear oxygen masks, too slow to react to a hostile uprising from what they once called livestock. I didn't speak Veritech fluently, but I knew the word for surrender. I shouted it. They ignored me. Big mistake. The Mac-Carry hurled a broken console across the room. It crashed into a comms panel, triggering a series of electrical fires. Ilsa's kind, whatever she was, moved like mist, shorting out systems with their touch. Others smashed consoles, ripped wiring from the ceiling, and then the station lights flickered red. Total system override. The Varukans activated the failsafe, a protocol meant to jettison the station's core and wipe out all evidence. They thought we'd panic. But I had been studying this place since the day they chained me. "Seal the deck." I shouted. We did. Then I rerouted the failsafe energy surge into the outer docking clamps. Instead of self-destruct, Xerxes Prime's hull peeled open like a flower in bloom. Dock patrol vessels tumbled into space, pilotless. Reinforcements wouldn't be arriving anytime soon. We weren't just in control now. We were the station. I looked at the terrified Varukan commander, slumped against the panel. His ceremonial armor cracked, his jaw trembling. "You studied humans," I told him. "What did your record say about us?" His mandibles clicked, terrified. "T that you're unstable, defiant, dangerous." I nodded. "Correct." And then I turned to the others. No more hiding. No more begging. If they wanted to test humanity, then let them see what happens when a human passes the test. The others cheered. Some wept, but they all understood. The first human captive had broken free. Now the galaxy would feel the aftershock. When you spend enough time in chains, freedom isn't quiet. It screams in your blood. It thrums in your bones. And when you've ripped it from your captors with bleeding fists and cracked knuckles, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a weapon. Xerxes Prime didn't fall in a single night, but it burned like one. The fires hadn't gone out. Smoke curled through ventilation shafts and spilled into cold, sterile corridors. Sparks rained from ruptured consoles. The deck plates shook from distant explosions, set by those who didn't just want to escape. They wanted vengeance. I walked through what used to be the central observation hub, stepping over shards of shattered display screens. Holographic images still flickered. Profiles of prisoners, including mine. Subject 626. H. Human. Threat level. Maximum containment. Underneath, someone had smeared a crude symbol in alien blood. My handprint. Let them see it. Let them remember. The control we seized gave us only hours before someone responded. Xerxes Prime was a research facility, not a fortress. And the Varukan Empire had fleets. But we had something they didn't. Intent. They fought to preserve order. We fought because we had nothing left to lose. And that's always more dangerous. The others looked to me now, even the ones twice my size or 5 times my age. They didn't understand human words. Not all of them. But they understood me. The way I moved. The way I killed. The way I never flinched. Ilsa stood at my side, her crystalline eyes scanning the command interface I'd ripped open. Her fingers, too delicate looking to be useful, danced across the keys. Data bloomed. Star maps. Supply caches. Weapon inventories. I pointed. What's that? She translated in clipped, broken standard. Armory. Deep level. Locked. Perfect. We took the lifts down manually, crawling through access shafts until we reached the base level. The doors were blast sealed. 2 meters thick, Varukan grade alloy. Impenetrable by their standards. But not ours. The Macquarie brought a reactor core from a maintenance drone. I scavenged control rods. Ilsa rewired the fusion cell's output, and we fashioned a crude but highly effective breach charge. Not elegant, not clean, just human. When it detonated, the sound was not an explosion. It was a declaration. Inside the armory were weapons I didn't even recognize. Plasma throwers, ionic disruptors, coil rifles shaped like scorpion tails. But tucked in one corner, collecting dust like it was beneath notice, was something familiar. A matte black carbine. Earth issue. My issue. Still marked with the 12th Recon emblem. When I touched it, it felt like coming home. It didn't matter that I had no ammo yet. The weight of it alone told me who I was again. Human. Soldier. Survivor. One by one, the others claimed their own tools of war. The Cytheri, who once had their wings clipped in captivity, strapped on grab packs and flight harnesses. The Grelge, blind but brilliant, activated sonic weapons that shattered glass with a whisper. Even Ilsa found a suit that shimmered around her like liquid metal. We weren't just an uprising anymore. We were an army. We trained in the cargo bays, converted them into makeshift drills. They mimicked my movements, my signals, even my tactics. Primitive by Varukan standards. Effective by mine. The Varukan distress signals kept pinging the void. Automated calls for help, for reinforcements. But every hour they didn't arrive, our chances grew stronger. Then came the decision. Strike first, I said. Ilsa tilted her head. Base! I nodded. We find the next Varukan station. We hit it. Hard. Fast. Before they know we're coming. They didn't question it. That's what terrified me the most. Not the silence, not the blood, but the way these broken species, these survivors, didn't hesitate anymore. They weren't waiting to be saved. They were ready to become the storm. We took 2 patrol ships docked beneath Xerxes Prime. I led the first. The Macquarie took the second. The Grelge hardwired the targeting systems. Ilsa plotted our course. Destination, Varaxis Theta, a slave processing satellite just 2 jumps away. I stared out the viewport as the stars stretched, warped, and collapsed into themselves. In that silent hum of faster-than-light travel, I finally let the thought surface. I was the first human captive, but I wouldn't be the last. And when the Varukans finally realized what they'd unleashed, it wouldn't just be me they feared. It would be what I awakened. Varukans always assumed they'd be the ones doing the hunting. It was in their doctrine, their tech, their smug, slitted eyes. Everything about their empire was built on the assumption that fear would keep the stars in check. They didn't account for what happens when fear turns into fury. The approach to Varaxis Theta was supposed to be suicide. That's what Ilsa told me, her voice barely audible over the crackling comms. Orbital defenses, 72-point satellite grid, automated rail cannons, full garrison, she said, her translucent fingers flying across a stolen NAV console. They expect stealth or retreat. Good, I said, strapping myself into the pilot seat. We're not giving them either. This wasn't an infiltration. This was an impact. We didn't slow down when we hit their radar. In fact, we sped up. Our patrol ships weren't meant for frontal assaults. But I didn't need them to survive the landing. I just needed them to deliver us. I punched the engines into burn red. G-forces crushed my chest, and warning alarms screamed like damned souls. Behind me, a dozen species-turned soldiers gripped whatever they could, teeth clenched and eyes wild. Some prayed. Some laughed. Me? I thought about Earth, about the war that got me here, and about what kind of universe we were going to leave behind when this was over. Then the hull screamed as we punched through the fated defense grid. One bolt clipped the aft wing, shredded it like tinfoil. Fire spilled across the view. Didn't matter. I was already aiming for the surface. The crash wasn't graceful. It was violent, brutal, perfect. We tore through Varaxis Theta's central tower, ripped it in half like it was paper. The station was planetary orbit class, not designed to take hits from within. I staggered out of the burning wreckage first, carbine raised, boots crunching over Varukan glass. Behind me, my crew rose, singed, bloodied, alive. Go! I barked. Zone control. Breached the holding bays. They moved like predators. The Grelge released sonic pulses that shattered Varukan helmets like brittle shells. The Macquarie used shock hammers to bash through corridor walls. Ilsa and her kin phased of bulkheads, emerging behind enemy lines like ghosts of a forgotten war. I stormed the main security nexus. It was full of monitors, full of screams, full of guards trying to make sense of the chaos we dropped into their perfect little hell. I didn't give them time. 2 bolts to the first one's throat, 1 to the power core. The entire station dimmed. No more comms. No more lockdowns. Just war. The prisoners in Theta's cells weren't ready for what hit them. They huddled in the dark, flinching from the lights, skin etched with trauma and chemical residue. Children, elders, entire species I didn't recognize, barely breathing, barely existing. I didn't shout. I just kicked the doors open and handed them weapons. That was enough. Some didn't move. Some cried, but many stood, took what they were given, and followed. One of them, a young male with scaled hands and gold-rimmed pupils, looked at me and said in a deep rasp, "Were you?" I smiled, blood running down my jaw from a head wound I didn't remember getting. "Human." He stared for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then, "I will be like you." And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about me anymore. This was about what I represented. The prisoners formed lines behind me as we moved through the station, floor by floor, wiping out resistance. Not indiscriminately. Some Varukans dropped their weapons. Some begged. Some we spared. But most never got the chance. By the time we reached the outer hangar ring, the Varukan command carrier Sundiver had already dropped out of hyperspace. Reinforcements. Bigger ships. Real firepower. We were outgunned. Outnumbered. And still no one ran. Because we had already proven something vital. We weren't afraid of dying anymore. The comms lit up with a demand for surrender. I opened the channel. "This is Subject 626. H," I said. "Human designation, Captain Anderskale. Former prisoner. Current commander of the station. We're not surrendering." The Varukan voice crackled back. Shocked. "You are outnumbered. Surrounded. Your death is inevitable." I looked at the dozens around me. Some holding stolen rifles. others holding nothing but broken chains. I looked at Ilsa, her eyes shimmering like dawn through frost, and I said, "Then I guess we'll make dying expensive." Transmission cut. Ilsa looked at me. "They're coming." I nodded. "Let them." There's a moment before battle, just before the breach alarms, before the screams, when everything goes still. Not quiet. Still, like the air knows what's coming, like the station is holding its breath. I stood in Varax's Theta's outer hangar, armor scraped raw, blood crusted along my forearm where a plasma shard had seared through. I still hadn't changed out of the scorched uniform I'd worn since Xerxes Prime. Didn't need to. It had become my standard. My warning. Ilsa floated beside me, her aura pulsing faintly with the station systems. She'd linked with the AI core 3 hours ago, mapping every duct, conduit, blast door, and defense node. Her voice shimmered like frost across steel. They'll breach in 6 vectors. Simultaneous assault. Predictive models, low survivability. I smirked. I'll take those odds. Behind us, the survivors, no, the soldiers, gathered. More than 200 of them now. Species long thought broken. Eyes wide and alive. Some still bore the scars of experimentation and indoctrination, but they stood tall, armed, unshaking. The Sundiver-class warship above us was a city of weapons. Drop pods had launched moments ago, giant red cylinders streaking to the black toward the hangar decks. Varukan enforcers, pulse armor, auto-target drones. They weren't sending a response team. They were sending a purge. "Do we run?" one of the ex-prisoners asked. "No," I said, "but..." "We hold this line," I said, leveling my carbine, "not for revenge, not even for freedom. We hold it so that no one else ends up in a cage like we did. We hold it so that when they tell the story of this day, they'll remember that this was when the Varukans stopped looking invincible." Ilsa reached out, touching the floor. The lights across the hangar dimmed, then flickered to blood red. Her voice echoed through the walls. Defense protocols synchronized. All hands ready. I heard the first clang as a pod smashed through the upper bulkhead. Then another. Then 6 more. They hit like war drums, followed by a hiss of gas, the sound of locking clamps retracting. Varukan enforcers emerged in tight formation. Silver armor, glowing visors, rail rifles raised. We didn't wait for them to speak. I opened fire. The hangar erupted into a storm of light and thunder. Plasma bolts screeched through the air. Smoke filled every breath. The grelled sonic weapons collapsed the catwalk above us, crushing 2 pods before they deployed. The Macquarie led a charge to the left flank, roaring like beasts from myth. I saw one enforcer try to activate a drone shield before a Macquarie shockhammer turned him into paste. Ilsa blinked through the walls, appearing behind squads and ripping out neural links with fingers that glowed white-hot. I moved through it all, cover to cover, aiming, firing, moving again. No hesitation. No second thoughts. The way they'd trained me back on Earth. Except this time, I wasn't fighting for flag. I was fighting to destroy one. More pods dropped. I detonated the explosives we'd planted beneath the far bay, ripping a firestorm through half the docking array. Bodies launched into the void. The Varukan comms went wild. Shouts, screams, orders. Disorder. Perfect. They kept coming. We kept holding. 2 hours. Maybe more. I lost track. Blood ran across the floor in slick pools, both theirs and ours. A Kidhari medic died trying to shield a wounded child. A Macquarie took a rail spike through the heart and still kept swinging. But we didn't break, because we weren't just defending. We were changing the shape of the galaxy. Then came the final wave. The Varukan general himself descended, encased in heavy exo-armor, bristling with weapon ports. Voice projected through the entire chamber. "You are nothing but creatures. Broken scraps of failed civilizations. Lay down your arms. Die with obedience." I stepped out from the barricade, bloodied, eyes burning. "You made one mistake," I said. He cocked his head. "Oh, you taught us what we were worth." Then I hurled a pulse grenade at his feet. It exploded with enough force to shatter his stabilizers, throwing him off balance. The ex-prisoners charged. Every species we'd freed surged forward in a wave. They dragged him down, ripped his armor apart, tore the lie of Varukan superiority to shreds. When it was over, there were fewer of us standing, but we were still standing. And the hangar? It was ours. Again, I limped through the wreckage, breathing smoke and silence. My carbine was nearly empty. My hands were raw. But when I looked at the faces around me, bloody, scarred, smiling, I knew something had shifted. They didn't just see me as a leader anymore. They saw me as a beginning. Word spreads fast in space, especially when it's soaked in blood and carried on stolen frequencies. Within a day of the battle at Varaxis Theta, the whole sector knew, not just that the Varukans had been beaten, but that they'd been beaten by what they considered refuse, by prisoners, survivors, one human, and the story only grew. They said the human could walk through fire, that he never slept, that he killed a Varukan commander with nothing but a piece of glass and a look. I didn't correct them. Let the myths rise. They were more powerful than the facts anyway. We didn't have fleets. We didn't have planets. We had an idea. And that was enough to light the galaxy. Ships started arriving, not Varukan. Those were still regrouping, terrified, trying to patch holes in their narrative. These were smugglers, traitors, even ex-soldiers. People who had lost everything to the Empire and wanted something back. They didn't all trust me, but they trusted the fire in my eyes. Ilsa coordinated our growing network. She never left the command core, syncing with every console, every drone, every relay. The others called her the Shimmer Queen. I think it embarrassed her, but she smiled when no one looked. The Makari named themselves a Fist of Broken Suns. They started teaching combat drills to any species that could walk. Even the Grelge, who had no eyes, no mouths, learned to fight with sound, to kill with rhythm. The galaxy had cast them all aside. Now they were sharpening each other. We converted Varaxis Theta from prison to fortress, ripped out the slave cells, reinforced the hull, stockpiled weapons. We even hijacked a Varukan dreadnought that tried to scout us, now docked, gutted, ours. And still more came. Some didn't even want revenge. They just wanted to stand beside something that didn't flinch. That's when the message came. Not from the Varukans, but from one of their client worlds, a minor species called the Kelv. They'd heard what we did, and they wanted to surrender their chains. Not to the Empire, to us. Ilsa played their transmission on the main deck. We were told you were dangerous, the Kelv elder said, his 6 eyes blinking in rhythm. But you are dangerous only to those who bind others. We have voted. We will not fight you. We will fight with you. And that was the moment I knew. We become more than a resistance. We were becoming a movement. Of course, the Varukans couldn't let that stand. They launched a system-wide communication blackout, jammed our relays, blocked our signal, tried to make us disappear from the galaxy. So I had Ilsa do the opposite. We amplified our signal, not with tech, with truth. We broadcast footage from the prison cells, from the battles, from the liberation of Theta. We let every planet hear the chants of freed slaves, see the faces of children holding plasma rifles beside the people who'd once guarded them. We showed them the scars and the strength that came after. Then I gave a message. They filmed me in the hangar, standing over the scorched Varukan insignia we'd carved into the deck during the battle. My voice didn't waver. My words were fire. You told us we were beneath you. You told us our species were broken, our past irrelevant, our futures extinguished. You taught us chains. We learned fire. So now, Varukans, you have a choice. Stay in your towers, clutching your lies and your cruelty, or come out and face what you created. But know this, we will not run, and we do not kneel. We are not your captives anymore. We are your reckoning. We sent that to every outpost, every neutral relay, every ex-Empire broadcast channel we could reach. Ilsa flooded the network. It reached Earth, too. I made sure of it. I didn't know if anyone would still be listening. But if they were, they'd know I hadn't died in that skirmish. They'd know I'd become something else. And the final line of that broadcast, the one I didn't write, the one the others added, burned itself into history. He was the first. He won't be the last. Fire doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't negotiate. It consumes. By the time the Varukan High Command met to discuss containment protocols, 24 slave worlds had already risen up. 7 declared independence. 3 Varukan governors went missing. And on Tarnis 9, they found a message carved into the central spire with a fusion torch. The stars are ours again. It wasn't a coordinated rebellion. It was contagion. We had become the matchstick, lit in a forgotten cage and hurled across an empire that had forgotten what it meant to bleed. They tried to erase us from the record. But truth, once it's seen, is a kind of weapon too. I stood once again on the hangar deck of Araxis Theta, our home, our beacon, reinforced, rearmed, alive with more voices than ever before. Ilsa had transformed the station into a kind of sanctuary for the willing and a graveyard for the bold. Fleet scouts fed us new targets. The Macquarie had turned their people's war chants into battle signals. The grelled sonic weapons could now bring down dropships mid-descent. We even salvaged an ancient Earth AI from a derelict trading vessel, codenamed Black Flag, and became our tactical brain. But there was no strategy for what came next, because this wasn't a war anymore. This was a cascade. Every chain we broke 3 more. Every Varukan patrol we destroyed turned into propaganda. The galaxy didn't want a hero. It wanted permission to fight back, and I gave it to them. The Varukans responded with desperation. They glassed 3 rebel planets, burned them to silence the message, thought we'd scatter. Instead, we descended. 30 ships from 10 species. Half of them shouldn't even have survived atmosphere. We made them fly anyway. I led the assault on Haska Prime, a fortress moon the Varukans thought was untouchable. It fell in a single night. They say I stormed the command citadel alone, fire clinging to my armor like a halo. They say the guards dropped their weapons before I even pulled the trigger. They say I walked out carrying the Varukan banner, shattered in half, and said only one word. Next. Most of that's exaggerated. Doesn't matter. The myth did more damage than I ever could. Entire squadrons of Varukan troops began refusing orders. Some turned on their own officers. Some defected. Others fled into the void, hoping to escape the judgment they once delivered with glee. And I watched it all from the observation deck, beside Ilsa. She was still silent most of the time, glowing faintly. The AI conduits braided into her translucent skin like veins of lightning. But sometimes, late at night, she'd speak. "This is not what I imagined freedom to look like," she whispered once. "Neither did I said. "Do you ever regret being taken?" I paused, thought about that cage on Xerxes Prime. The cold, the experiments, the silence. And then I thought about this moment, about ships docking under our flag, about children learning not to fear footsteps, about entire worlds learning to speak without permission. "Every day," I answered. "But I'd do it again, if this is what came from it." Because I wasn't just the first human captive anymore. I was the first to break the chain. And everything after that, every uprising, every burning banner, every shattered collar, wasn't about me. It was about what humanity taught the stars. That you can cage the body, you can blind the eye, you can chain the wrist, but you can't crush the will. And when one will stands, others rise. I was a spark. Now the galaxy is burning.